Welcome everybody to the American Space Museum. I'm Marquette. We're so glad you're with us to stay curious today. We're going to talk about the shuttles of the month of September. We've got 11 shuttles launched in the month and the 30-year history of the shuttle era. We've got two spacewalkers here behind us here. We'll tell you who those are in a minute and what they're doing on an important mission that was the first time in 10 years this happened. Do you know what that is? Well, stay curious. Also, Marty, say hello to Marty. Marty Winkle, my co-producer. How you doing, Marty?
I'm doing just peachy, Mark. How are you?
Well, we enjoyed today meeting Tom Jones, his first of 4 or 5 days out there at the Space Center. And Tom's agreed to be interviewed on Stay Curious. And we're going to record that interview Friday night and air it at another time. He's certainly one of the A-list astronauts with 4 beautiful flights. He really had some interesting missions, Marty, didn't he? And a great speaker out there. So you'll enjoy Tom Jones here soon on Stay Curious. Marty, you know, I love juxtaposing history, and you come up with things once in a while. And we were busy doing some production details with our Trekkie techie, Jessica Galloway. Thank you for your help, Jessica, as we're going to get back to streaming our international guests on Google Drive. But Marty, the 4 missions I have today, interestingly enough, all 4 commanders of those 4 missions we're going to highlight, it was their 4th and final mission. How about that? 4 commanders flying that we're going to talk about, and each one of them is their 4th and final mission. So you're going to enjoy some space history, as well as we love the art of the space patches. There's a lot of hidden meaning in these patches. When we talk to astronauts that we're privileged to living here on the Space Coast, they love talking about the patches and their involvement. Astronauts had a lot to do with designing the patch. That was one of the first things a commander did, was kind of see who was going to be the most talkative or most creative or whatever in that pool of trying to figure out what your mission patch is going to be once you decide to be on a mission. So hope you enjoyed today's program. Please tell your friends to follow us on YouTube. We're approaching 2,000 followers on YouTube. We'd like to crack that. And of course, we appreciate everybody on Facebook that's clicking the link on there to go to YouTube. That's where we put a little bit of money every show into our coffers here at our proud nonprofit, the U.S. Space Walk of Fame Foundation, where, of course, the American Space Museum is our anchor as the beautiful museum that for over 20 years we have been preserving the birth of America's space age right here in its delivery room, Brevard County, Florida. Well, Marty, we're going to keep our doors open with this auction October 7th of space memorabilia. Chuck Jeffrey, our auction analyst and chief operating officer, has put together what I believe is like our 26th auction that we've done in the last 6 years. This one is going to be incredible. This has the cherished Robbins coins, okay? These Robbins coins are the most expensive thing taken to space. They go from $10,000 to $30,000. Each one of them's numbered and so forth. We've got several auctions items for that on this. We're going to be talking a lot about it as we lead up to the August 7th noon auction that will be online only. And starting next week, you'll be able to see all of the lots on the link. Go up to our Facebook page and link it there. I'll put the QR code and stuff up there as we open up this auction of 350 some lots, and it is truly going to be one of the best. There's a lot of photographs from the Apollo missions, real photographs taken out of the labs of Johnson Space Center, as well as lots of astronaut autographs. There you see President Nixon talking to the Apollo 11 crew, and I think all 3 of them signed that, and maybe Nixon himself, so that would go for quite a lot of money. So save your money, borrow some money, bid till it hurts, okay, as we're going to have a good auction October 7th. That's a Saturday, of course, starting at noon. Well, here are the shuttles of the month of September, and we had 11 shuttles that were flown with Oh, where did I grab that? Marty, my flyers over there. 74 astronauts, I believe. That manila folder right there. Vertical. I may have to get up and get it. It says shuttles on it. No, I'm in front of my desk there. Yeah, does that say shuttles? Anyway, here are the 11 missions. We have got, that's all right, Marty. I set it down somewhere and I don't need it. We've got all these missions include 74 astronauts. I think 6 of them were women. And my little folder that's got my shuttles of the month, I've misplaced it. So don't worry. I'll find it later, Marty. I'll see it later in front of me. Usually have it within arm's length. Anyway, some incredible missions there. We're going to talk about the top 4. We didn't have any launched until September 7th, okay? So from the 1st to the 6th is one of the rare dates on the calendar that no shuttles were orbiting into Earth at all. And then we have a juxtaposition of where we have 8 shuttles of the 11 and 47 astronauts orbiting to Earth during this time in space. So we're going to go across the 4 up at the top there. STS-69 launched on this date in 95. STS-106, which was an infant ISS mission in 2000. Then you had STS-64, which did something that hadn't been done in 10 years. Tease you on that to stay tuned. And STS-115 continued the work being done on the International Space Station that was interrupted because of the Columbia disaster. And then 114 flew the return to flight. But they didn't do a whole lot of ISS construction work. This was a big hard hat mission on 115. And we're going to show you the span of 6 years from 2000 of STS-106 to the 115, what the space station looked like then. Here is where we mash up all of the shuttles of the month. The timeline on the bottom is the days of the month that they were in orbit. Left is the number of shuttles. We've got 11 of them up there. And as you see, today, the 7th, is the first, we launched STS-69. Then 106 is launched on the 8th. And then on the 9th, we have 2 missions launched. Of course, they're 12 years apart there. And then as you see on the 16th, we got 2, 4, 6, 8 shuttles and 47 people can say that they were orbiting the Earth in a time frame from September 15th to 18th there. So you never know what you get out of charts like this, and I'm always kind of intrigued by looking at information and putting it together like this. And we're going to polish this up, me and our executive director Karan Conklin, as a project, and maybe put a pamphlet together of all these great shuttle missions from 1981 to 2011. Well, let's kick it off with our missions here. This is the STS-64 crew that is called the Dog Crew, okay? And oh my gosh, I forgot the notes on this, Marty. And make this big. I'm going to step off here just a second, friends. Let me go off camera here and find my notes of there it is, right there, right where I put it, underneath everything else. Where's the so embarrassing. Here. Okay. Sorry, but I had to do that so that I could talk intelligently about this crew here. And then I went off camera and I probably didn't grab my notes on that. No, I didn't. Doggone it. Well, that's what we've been doing here for over 850 episodes. But it's worth it because I don't know the names of all these astronauts. I know their names, but I don't know their nicknames, Marty, because you're looking at the Dog 2 crew. Dog is in Roman numeral 2, the Dog Crew, okay? And here's the 5-man crew before Orbiter Endeavour lifted off, and they're eating out of dog bowls, okay, for their astronaut pre-flight meal. They dubbed themselves the Dog Crew 2, continuing a spirit of camaraderie that began on an earlier flight, STS-53, in which Jim Voss, who's on this crew, and Mission Commander David Walker were crew members. And it's just one of those astronaut joke things that they got kind of carried away into a patch of all things here, okay? And they were the commander was Red Dog, okay? That's David right there in the middle, David Walker on his fourth and last flight. All these commanders, these 4 missions, it's their fourth and last flight. The pilot's Ken Cockrell. He's the third one to the right there. He was Cujo, and his second of 5 flights. Dogface was Jim Voss. So Jim Voss is to the left of the commander, David Walker, on his third or 5th flight. Jim Newman, Marty, we've met Jim Newman on the far right there. He was Pluto, the dog Pluto, second of 4. And the rookie, Michael Gernhardt there, was Underdog, of course, the rookie. So they had a lot of fun. They up there in space. There again is that Dog Crew patch. There's the beautiful launch of Endeavour on this mission. And get too carried away here. Facts here. So get everything juxtaposed out of the way. Beautiful launch. When was that? Of course, September 7th, 11:09 a.m. This was quite an experienced crew, of course, except for Gernhardt. And there's the patch. And highlights of this was, I'll tell you about that in a second. It was the first time that 2 different payloads were retrieved and deployed during the same mission, all right? That was the Spartan flying atmospheric tester, so to speak, and then the Wakefield facility. That was kind of an important mission objective there. But let's look at this. Its emblem is 69, so you kind of got a 6 and a 9 feel there with the curves. You all get that. It was designed by the mission crew members. The Wake Shield facility is represented in the center by the astronaut's emblem against a flat disc. Okay, that's the astronaut pin in the center. And the Wakefield Observatory does look like a disc. Right there it is in space before it was set free. Very complicated but essential analysis of like the wake behind the space shuttle that it's making in the atmosphere. As thin as it is, 250 miles up, there's still some ionization of atoms and so forth going on, and this helps study that. The astronaut emblem signifies the importance of human beings in space exploration, reflected by the planned spacewalk that they were going to practice ISS activities to evaluate spacesuit designs. The 2 stylized space shuttles highlight the ascent and entry phases of the mission. Along with the 2 spiral plumes, the stylized space shuttles symbolize a NASA first. The deployment and recovery on the same mission of 2 spacecraft, the Wake Shield facility and Spartan. And the constellations you see there in the stars, Canis Major and Canis Minor, the big and little dog, represent the crew's objectives of the Spartan and International Extreme and the International Extreme Ultraviolet Hitchhiker payload. The 2 constellations also symbolize the talents and dedications of the support personnel who make space shuttle missions possible. And these are the dog constellations, Canis Major and Minor, and this is the dog crew number 2. So there's the Wake Shield facility up there. I keep calling, the Wake Shield facility. 12 feet in diameter. It generated an ultra vacuum in space within which to grow thin films for the next generation of advanced electronics. So behind it, these things going on would create electronics to be analyzed back on Earth. So that is our dog crew, STS-69. And there is Hurricane Louis that they saw up in space in September. Of course, we're into the hurricane wheelhouse now for the next 2 months. So we're always on alert here in the peninsula of Florida. That's Hurricane Louis, okay, back in 1995. Well, let's move on to the next launch in the space shuttle in September. That's 106. This is the first flight to the International Space Station since the arrival of the Russian component, Zvezda. So this is the infancy in 2000 when it was launched on September 8th at 8:45 a.m. Terry Wilcutt, seated to the right there. Marty and I have had the privilege of meeting Terry Wilcutt at the astronaut encounter. This was his fourth and last mission. And then Scott Altman is the pilot to the left there, and it's his second of 4 missions. The next 2 would be Hubble repair missions for Scott. Then you've got up at the upper left is David Burbank. You got Richard Mastriccio. Edward Lu's in the middle. The Russian on the far right is Yuri Malenko, and Boris Murakov is also on board there. So a big crew. All 4 of these missions had big crews on board. The 11-day objectives were to prepare the station for the first crew. So they activated on some EVAs, some of the equipment, the pressure mating adapter, and they put batteries in place. And quite one of the first hard hat missions of the space station was STS-106. And here's the blast off. And let's look at that patch. There's, you see the space station below. And this is what, when they left, that was all that the space station was at the time, okay? Or it actually is dwarfed by the length, 122 feet of our orbiter there. Or a 76-foot orbiter, I think it is. This is the crew patch for STS-106, which is the first shuttle flight since to the ISS since the arrival of the Russian service module Zvezda. It is depicted on the crew patch, mated with the already orbiting Node 1 Unity module of US and the cargo-based functioning. Oh, I went too far there. I'm on the wrong patch. That's the patch that should be on there. Okay, sorry about that. The astronaut office symbol, a star with 3 rays of light, provides a connection between the Space Shuttle Atlantis and the space station, much the same as the program of the shuttle is linked to the ISS during its construction. Stylized versions, you see, of the red, white, and blue of America and the red, white, and blue of Russia's flags are on the left and right. They meet at the space station in the stars and stripes there. In the stars, they symbolize both the cooperation and joint efforts of the 2 countries during the development and deployment of the permanent outpost in space, as well as the close relationship of the American and Russian crew members, which continues 23 years later as they depend on each other for their survival up there. So the crew there, yeah, I already told you about the crew. So their mission was came back on September 20th, a really long mission, almost 12 days for Atlantis there. And that's what it looked like, the International Space Station. And we're going to see what it looks like 6 years later when the STS-115 left it. Now we're up to a beautiful mission of STS-64. This is a mission that did something pretty extraordinary. We look at the patch there. There are the crew members. You've got the astronaut Richard Richards is the commander. Okay, he's front and center there. Left of the lady is Susan Helms. Blaine Hammond is the pilot. You have Mark Lee, Jerry Lininger, and Carl Mead. Okay, And see, Jerry's the one on the left, upper left there. And then you got Carl Meade and Mark Lee orbiting in space there. Well, here's their mission patch. Let me go back this way there. There's their mission patch, and it shows something that hasn't been done in 10 years. The patch depicts the Space Shuttle Discovery in a payload bay to Earth attitude, with its primary payload, the LIDAR in-space technology experiment, operating in support of the mission to planet Earth. Light 1 is a LIDAR system that uses 3 wavelength laser, symbolized by the 3 gold rays emanating from the star in the payload bay that form part of the astronaut symbol. This did all kinds of things to help with GPS alignments and other perspectives of our global community here in relation to mapping. The major objective of LIGHT is to gather data about also the Earth's troposphere and stratosphere, represented by the clouds and dual-colored Earth limb. A secondary payload is the Free Flyer Spartan 201 satellite, shown on the remote manipulator arm. See that above the astronaut on the left. And the RMS, remote manipulator system, operates another payload, the Shuttle Plume Impingement Flight Experiment, SPIFX. A newly tested, now here's what was not done in 10 years. The newly tested Simple Aid for EVA Rescue, SAFER, is represented symbolically by the 2 small nozzles on the backpacks of the 2 untethered astronauts. All right. Those astronauts in this picture here are Mark Lee and Carl Meade. All right. They were the first ones to test this. 200 miles above the Earth, they actually performed an in-space rehearsal or demonstration of a rescue using the never-before-flown hardware. Meade wears the small backpack unit with its complementary chest-mounted control unit, and he's free-flying. And Lee anchored to the space shuttle arm in this here. They took turns, all right, using their hardware going out from each other so that the tether they could grab them. They didn't go further away to where the remote manipulator arm would not get them. The test was the first phase of a larger, safer program, leading finally to the development of a production version that is now flown on the International Space Station. And we heard Tom Jones talk about that safer system that he used when he did an EVA at the International Space Station on his last mission. So pretty cool looking patch there for this dramatic test of there's Carl Meade, free flying. All right, no tether. You got to have a few anxious moments there, Marty. And the whole idea is that this had a thruster system that you could control and bring you back to safety. So quite a dramatic picture there. And there you see the guys in Earth orbit up there this was happening this month in 1994, Marty. And you can say that that's almost 30 years ago, definitively. So we met Mark Lee out the Space Center before. He's been out there. We've never talked to him about the safer system. So that's what's fun to learn these things. We go out there and talk to them about something that we didn't know at the time when we met them, and then they enjoy sharing their experiences with everybody out there. So gorgeous backdrop that we pushed there, the first test of the safer system. Well, going forward is the last mission we're going to highlight. Always like this patch. It reminds me of an aircraft carrier. Okay, and but here's the crew. The 6 astronauts are Commander, again, on the right, seated, is Commander Brett Jett on his 4th of 4 flights. Christopher Ferguson is the commander pilot there. Chris is on his first flight, and I think he had 3 missions, and he commanded the last flight of in the shuttle program, Atlantis on 135. The lady is Heidi Marie Stephenson Piper. Heidi Marie Piper, all right? You got Joe Tanner is next to her on his 4th and last flight. Daniel Burbank is on his 2nd flight. And then the Canadian on the far right with the Canadian flag on his arm sleeve, shoulder there, is Stephen McLean on his 2nd and last flight. This was a launch where lightning struck the pad on August 25th and caught some of the workers up there in the White Room. Quite a traumatic time that we've talked to some of the workers about. But this mission resumed the hiatus of 4 years that not a wrench was turned on the space station, so to speak, after the Columbia re-entry disaster, and then the successful return to flight of 114. Didn't do much up there, basically checked the systems out, took a lot of supplies up to the ISS. And then this was the first one where they resumed, and they attached a truss, lifted it out of its berth and maneuvered it over for installation. We had 3 spacewalks. Tanner and Piper and Burbank did all those, and McLean. Yeah, Burbank and McLean did 1, and then Tanner and Heidi Marie Piper did 2 EVAs there. And the patch, that's the way the space station looked after they left. Remember, on the earlier flight of STS 106, it was just basically a cylinder with a couple solar panels out of it, and this is actually how it looked 6 years later. The patch, we're going to tell you about the artwork of it. I always see an aircraft carrier on this, Marty. It always, which for obvious reasons, but that's the solar panel spreading out there. This patch depicts Space Shuttle Atlantis approaching the International Space Station. As it heads for the station in its configuration after 115 up there in the upper right, it leaves the astronaut symbol, okay, on the bottom there as it comes up from the bottom. Behind the shuttle are solar arrays, hence it is the first shuttle mission to deliver solar arrays since the Columbia disaster. It is also the first true truss assembly mission since 113. The names of the crew are depicted along the border when there's any, and just a simple Earthrise, the Earth being depicted below there, the research being done, the thin blue line that keeps us all alive here. So quite a mission there. That a long mission, 11 days, 19 hours, almost 12 missions again, 12 days for Atlantis again on there. Very successful, and this was so important in 2006 after 4 years of not doing anything to the space station significantly. We're back finishing the job. In today's world, we see the space station go overhead. That is one of the legacies of our 30-year program of the ISS. 115 is the patch number, crew mission number. The 12A is the launch sequence of the pieces and parts put up by the space station. Basically, you say the 12th mission to do hard hat work up there. All right, Marty. Well, we were teasing everybody with Shuttles of September and these 5 albums, all right, and teased you a little bit earlier in the week that they all contain songs that were wake-up calls. And these wake-up calls were done on September 15th. But I'm going to do them today. And could you guess what would be in the Jungle Book up there on the left? Of course, Flight 48, Bare Necessities, was played for Ken Reitler's daughters who were in the Mission Control viewing room that day when they woke up Dad orbiting the Earth on STS-48. Then you've got STS-90, the one that's not on there is, yes, we had 51 there in the middle. Perry Como. Who remembers Perry Como? Marty and I do. Don't let the stars get in your eyes was the wake-up call in 1993 for that mission. On 51 was that was in 1993, and that was Discovery. Then you had you've got Lady's a Tramp, okay, and the song for the STS-69 crew to wake up to was He's a Tramp, all right, from this cartoon movie. And then we move over to 106. That was the University of Connecticut fight song was played on that. That's their marching band there. And I failed to look up who the astronaut was that went to University of Connecticut. Let's see, on 115 was on 106. I was trying to think of Terry Wilcutt. Wilcutt was born in Hartford, Connecticut, Marty. Remember? He was born in Hartford, Connecticut, the commander, and so they did the University of Connecticut fight song there. And then the final little wake-up call of astronaut music was done for Joe Tanner in the Eagles, and he had Hotel California. I guess it was going to be Life in the Fast Lane, the wake-up call on that. So just a little meme there to wet your whistle of your thirst for shuttle knowledge that you get here and nowhere else on the American Space Museum. We'll be talking more about the shuttles of the month of September as we go through, including the STS-47 in the middle there with the first African-American female, Mae Jemison, her one and only flight. And STS-68 is going to be highlighted by Mikey Haddad, our shuttle payloads expert that's got a lot of, this was an important mission that mapped the entire world to within a few feet. And this is the data that was done in 1994 and 93 with SR-1, Space Radar Lab 1 and 2. This data is what we're using in our Garmin or other type of electronic devices to navigate us around to where we want to go these days. Whoever folds out a map, Marty? Nobody. And we're going to talk at the end of the month about the Space Radar Lab and how it's still being used 30 years later by everybody that's got a vehicle out there, basically. So, well, thank you, Marty. I think we had a good job today. We got Doug Forrest watching, Gary Gerald, Carlton Bailey, Dave Stange, Tom Usiak, Robert Law. We've got Steve up there in Illinois. Thank you for chiming in. He really enjoyed, thank you for your comments, Steve, on John Tribe yesterday. If you missed the interview with an Apollo legend, you'll want to look at yesterday's Stay Curious program with John Tribe, who talked pretty openly about the Apollo 1 fire that he was an engineer at and heard everything going on in the headsets in his own ears. Cynthia Rossi watched that, I know. Bill Whiting, thank you, Bill. We look forward to seeing you back on the Space Coast. Space Monkey, and Tom Celentano. Tom's already getting his bank account ready to support us with a fabulous auction. Tom Celentano, you're not going to believe the items that Chuck Jeffrey has on this auction. Probably one of the strongest we've ever had as far as the dollar amount of some of the things that are involved. So hope that you can all find in your heart to watch that auction October 7th. We'll be we'll be showing you some of these items, of course, as we start going next week. So Marty, thank you for a great Streamlabs program. Tomorrow we've got Ralph Palmer is going to be on our Future Friday program. Ralph Palmer 30 years ago worked for Grumman, now Northrop Grumman. He worked on nuclear powered rockets, nuclear powered propulsion, okay? Nuclear propulsion systems. And though it was 30 years ago that we thought using plutonium and it's radiating to create heat, and then whatever you wanted to create with that heat to run a rocket, you thought that technology was dead? Oh no. In fact, NASA is planning in 2027 to launch a nuclear powered rocket. And 30 years ago, it was all outlaid to be done. Ralph Palmer is going to be on our program to talk about his career 30 years ago, and uh, what he's doing today is still, at that time, that was a black ops program, top secret. So looking forward to having Ralph Palmer on Stay Curious. You will enjoy that as we bring you future Fridays tomorrow. Until then, Marty, I'm Marquette saying we can't wait to see you visit our museum. Why? To bridge the space between us. See you tomorrow, and we'll talk some nuclear rockets.